if you'll notice, it looks all terrible again.
No,
So last night's tornado just took out my car. All right, so it's been 2 years since we pulled this thing out of the woods, and I've been doing some work on it, and it's been way more work than I could have ever anticipated. It was much worse than I had originally thought. Most of the work was on the inside, a lot of work on the roof, some electrical and whatnot, and there's still a lot to do. So I'm gonna kind of give an update, what was done, inside what we had to do, and what the plan moving forward is, because I got actually some big issues to deal with this thing, so we're gonna try to figure it out. First thing we did was actually the electrical. So the front end here, as you can see, everything's new. New lights, new indicators, new bulbs, new grill, spotlights, everything's brand new, including the top at the top there. I just went all brand new. I got rid of every incandescent bulb we could have found and went straight LED. And when we did that, the first problem was in the past, the indicators didn't work very well. They were kind of on and off. They would flash quickly. So I knew the relay had to be changed. But when you change to LED, everything just stops working because it's a different voltage. So basically, I had to look for different ones. I went through 3 or 4, and eventually I found one that was compatible with LED. Put it in, and everything just works perfectly. I can't show you right now because there's no power on it, but it's great. So mission accomplished. We got lights. They all work. We got indicators, LED nice and bright so people can see when we're turning because for most of the time when I drove this in the past, you could barely see the indicators. It was a little sketchy. Next thing we did was actually we started the roof because it had really bad leaks. So I'm going to show you some photos before and after what we did there, because as you saw this thing before, it was covered in moss. It had stuff growing on it. Even the frame right now is still jammed with old nests and birds' nests and snake skin, mouse nests. It was disgusting. There's so much crap in there. So I'm going to show you right now the roof, and then we're going to go inside, show you what it went like, and then I'm going to bring you up to speed what it looks like right now and the new problems I have encountered. So being in the woods for 6 years and just generally being 30 years old, you can see the roof really degraded. Basically, moss started growing, you have some rust, everything rubber was basically garbage. The leaks were so bad, I just ripped everything off, got rid of it, and had to start from scratch basically. The only problem is, if you want to do something like that, you can't actually buy the parts. There's nothing, I couldn't buy the parts, the grommets, the pieces of metal and rubber that went across, so I had to custom make everything basically. And it was a bit of a challenge considering I've never done something like that before. But after the paint was on, I ended up just buying some pieces of steel, spray painting them, priming, coating, that kind of thing. Put them on with screws, put some caulking in between the joints, but also added some rubber, so it turned out pretty good. And then in the end, I had a roof rack. I don't have a before of it, but the roof rack was in rough shape, so just re-spray painted it, got it fixed up, and managed to salvage it because a lot of the roof racks are about 800 bucks, and that's very expensive. Didn't want to pay for that. And then we added some LED lights on the top. The rail before was just an aluminum piece, and it worked okay, but it was jumping up and down, and it looked kind of nasty. So I actually managed to salvage that part of the aluminum, added in some steel underneath, screwed it all together, welded the joints, put it onto the roof rain gutters, and managed to get it to work. So brand new lights, really cool, super bright, and it looks decent for somebody who's never made one of these things before. The lights are awesome. Tested them out. Haven't tested them out in the forest yet. Can't wait to do that. So then we moved to the trunk, and the trunk looked kind of nasty, but I was like, well, it can't be that bad. And that turned out completely wrong, because as soon as I started taking off, it had like a rubberized layer basically. A long time ago, somebody put a rubberized layer of paint on, and then we basically put paint over it just in the trunk. And what happened was there was rust underneath, and they hadn't actually cleared the rust. They just spray painted it. So my assumption is, obviously, since this was a mudding truck, they didn't take a pristine truck and, you know, get it all outfitted. They just kind of took a rusty thing and they didn't really deal with any rust. So if it lasted this long, I thought to myself, you know, I could remove the rust and kind of salvage it. But as I got deeper and deeper into it, I started seeing holes, and it was just a pain. And all of a sudden, I got kind of scared, because I thought, oh my gosh, this is kind of a big endeavor for me. And the worst part is to remove all of this layer. You can't just take a wire brush and go at it. You literally had to put a wire brush onto a grinder and spend hours and hours and hours. It took 3 days just to do the back, that one part. So I removed it all, and I basically got it stripped down in the metal, primed it, painted it, patched the holes with some body filler, and before then I put some steel in there. Body filler with carbon, primed it again, painted it, and then basically it started looking quite decent. And then I thought, let's take it one step further. So this truck is so loud because it's a diesel and it has no sound protection virtually at all. I thought to myself, well, let's just buy some sound protection. So I went out and I found this, it's like a Chinese product. It's cheap. It's got an adhesive layer on the bottom, but it looks really good. At least it looks cool. I know it doesn't matter because I'm gonna cover it anyways, but I put it over, I put it on the actual, the ground there, and then I put it in the walls, and then I just tried out the truck itself, and just that one part made a huge difference. I couldn't believe it. It sounded like, before it just sounded like all the doors were open. So as soon as I did that, I realized I have to buy more of the stuff. I ended up buying about 5 packs. I think I spent quite a few $100s on it, but it was totally worth it. Once the soundproofing was on, I found some rubber, and I just basically put a big sheet of rubber on, glued it on with contact cement, and then I just put some caulking around the corners. You can't really see it that well there, but if you have an idea of how to finish that nicer than it is, let me know. I don't really know what to do over the wheel wells. I would love to cover the wheel wells. I'm not really sure what to cover it with. It's kind of it's a strange shape, so I'm not really sure what to do. I ended up putting some aluminum trim to finish the side and the edge there, and it actually looked pretty good. I was pretty happy with that. It looked nice, and then you can really see there where the rubber ends. I would love to be able to finish that. Since then I put polyurethane caulking, and it does look better, but at the same time you could still see the polyurethane. So not the cleanest finish in the world. So that took about, a couple weeks to do. That was a big project, and you can see the bumper has been painted as well as the hitch. I ended up stripping all that, painting it all over again because the original was just ripped apart. So all of a sudden, now the roof's done, the back is finished, and we're just moving on. So now I had some good confidence that I can do the rest of it. So I went on to the passenger compartment. Entering the rear seat area, I knew right away that this one's going to be much worse because I could just see rust everywhere, even without removing any of the paint. And you would touch areas and you can just see holes. All of a sudden, more and more holes. And this is where I really started getting worried because I thought, oh my gosh, this thing's just totally falling apart. So I took everything off, I stripped it all down, I cut out all the holes, and at that point, I just looked like a big piece of Swiss cheese because there were so many holes everywhere. So I had to do near the wheel wells. You can see I finished it there. Ended up cutting out some more holes where the batteries go. And at this point, it was just looking pretty rough. So my confidence was kind of definitely lower. I primed everything before I even did anything because I noticed that if you just leave it overnight, it would just start rusting again. So I tried to clean it up and prime everything and keep it going. And then eventually I added some metal. I tack welded it in. Then I added some carbon fiber mesh as well as body filler to hold it all down. I know it's probably a better idea to screw it all down rather than do it that way, but it seems to hold pretty well. And I did knock it with a hammer and everything is really, really rock solid. So I think as long as it doesn't get wet, it's okay. If it gets wet, then I might have a problem. Then I end up priming and painting it all down. And at that point, it actually starts looking kind of nice, looks kind of cool. And we're almost ready to go at that point. So now we moved on to the front of the actual truck, and you can see it just looked nasty right from the beginning. It just doesn't look good at all. And I knew that this one's gonna be a lot of fun because there had just been water collecting in this thing for years and years and years. Like literally from the time I drove it in '05 to current day, it still had water there. So it's always been leaky, and I knew that floor was gonna be a disaster. And that carpet, we actually put that carpet down in 2006, but the method we used was actually really bad. We probably did the worst thing could because somebody had done just rubber spray paint basically, and that was there, and then we put it's called Black Knight tar on top of that, which is used for roofing, and then we put carpet down. I'm not sure why we did that, and that was the worst thing ever because tar never actually dried in a lot of areas. After 15, 16 years, it's still wet, and what happened was just eating away at the floor. The floor rusted. So as soon as we peeled it back, you could see just the floor went real nasty, and it was just soaked. And at that point, you can see it's just so brittle, and it was just like that everywhere. Pulled it all back, and holes just started appearing everywhere. And as soon as we removed the center console, I knew that a lot of work ahead of me. This is definitely my biggest challenge yet. I spent 4 days, 4 full days with a grinder. I had to actually close the doors because my neighbors were getting mad at that point. And so I closed all the doors. I didn't want to make them angry. I was trying to do it when no one was around. But I had to be dressed in full gear, so I was wearing a face mask, goggles, ear protection, a mask. It was just a ridiculous amount of gear, not to get all the shards. And I had to go through 3 brushes on that grinder. So at one point, the brush just starts falling apart, and the pieces just start getting embedded everywhere. So it was brutal. You needed to wear all that protection. And it was like 40 degrees, so I was so hot. I was wearing all that crap and doing all this, and the doors were closed, so I was as little noise as possible. So it was 4 days of that, and it was just terrible, but got it done. As soon as that was done, you could see the holes were more apparent where they are. You can really see it there. And basically just started working from there. Cut everything out, and then I put down some primer, and the primer just, all of a sudden, just a massive difference just putting that primer down. Once the primer was down, that's when I started addressing the actual holes. So what I did is, rather than cutting all those pieces of metal out, I figured it would just be better just to cover it, because they had actually a lot of structural integrity, that floor, even with the holes. So I just added that on with screws and basically primed that, painted everything, and that's how it all held together. And basically underneath the car, I don't have any pictures, I put some body filler with the carbon fiber, and it was rock solid, so very pleased with it. Next thing I started working on was the actual seats. The seats were all custom, so my dad had actually created those brackets in 2005, and they looked a little different. I didn't get all the before pictures, but they were not connected. Those 2 parts, those 3 bars you see, I actually welded those on because they were not connected. They were only connected by the seat, and I just found that it was a little flimsy. So I welded those 3 bars on, removed the rust, and we ended up painting it. And before we put it in, we did the soundproofing. So I put the soundproofing back on the floor, and you can see now the soundproofing, it really starts coming together. And that at that point, I remember turning it on even without any of the seats. And soundproofing made such a big difference, because before it just sounded like all the doors were open. Put the soundproofing on, and then I found this awesome WeatherTech mat, basically. These are just mats you buy for your trunk, and you cut to fit, basically, and they're just for winter. You know, we need it here in Canada, so I bought 2 of those, and rather than use it for the trunk, I put them sideways, connected them in the middle, used an aluminum trim to put it all together, and just glued it all down. And I thought that would be just a really nice way to finish it off. And then underneath the wheel wells, just beside the wheel wells, sorry, where your feet go, I just added some rubber that I found. It's just some mats and whatnot, and finish it off. And it's all done. Basically just added the seat back in. I put the new freshly painted seat bracket in, and it was good to go. So, and since then I've actually put the seat back in so you can start it, and it's pretty much been at that stage. So the project had been moving great along until this happened. Do you want me to move your car at least? I will.
No, Max, no. Ah! Come here, what are you doing?
There it goes. Yeah, it's done.
What?
It broke the tree. So last night's tornado just took out my car. Couldn't believe it. We had a tornado and a tree fell right on the car. It landed straight on top of the roof and onto my new brackets and fixed roof rack, and it just kind of destroyed everything. I remember I was devastated. I was so mad and I was so sad after that work. I literally felt like crying because all that work gone into it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, now I gotta do this again. I gotta patch this, patch that. And then I realized how fortunate I'd been. Had I not done that, the roof would have been absolutely destroyed. A tree fell in the car and that's all the damage there was, which is incredible because the door's still open. There was a little bit of the rain gutter had been bent a little bit, but all things considered, none of the welds broke, which I was amazed with because I thought, you know, for a guy that doesn't weld for a living, I thought maybe, you know, they're good enough, but I'm not really sure. If a tree fell on them and the welds didn't break, I'm sure it's fine, so I'm really happy with that. Had to end up doing all that again. I ended up removing everything once again. Had to put more body filler on, fix all the holes, put more caulking in, and at this point it's a little dent, and you can see I bought new gutters. I just haven't replaced them because I really don't feel like going through all that effort right now. But after all that, ended up getting it all fixed and back ready to go. So at this point, I'm gonna kind of show you where the project's at now and the challenges that are ahead of me. So as you can see with the back, everything's pretty much the same as when we did the repairs. Everything looks pretty good. The floor's still good. Put some aluminum trim here, as you saw earlier on. Really pleased with that. Everything's kind of held up really well. Still want to do some finishing of this area. I'm thinking of putting diamond plate on the side here. I'm not closing it up because I have to fix the lights, the rear lights. There's no reverse lights. I looked underneath the transmission, and the plug it's just a plug. There's nothing connected to it. And I looked in here, and I don't know what the hell the guy did, but there's nothing to connect it to. And actually one of the lights is completely missing, not the bulb, like the whole assembly. One side does have it, so I have to kind of figure out how to get that to function again, because when I put it in reverse, there's no lights, so that would never pass safety. So right now it's kind of just a battle of making it pass safety. And that's my first issue. I love suggestions. Let me know what you would do here, whether I should run just a new set of lights or just rewire it, or I don't know, we'll figure it out from there. Once it's all done, I kind of want to, like I said, put some diamond plate on the side, close this up on this side here. There's a big opening, put the car jack in there, and I'll put a little hatch. At least that's the plan. I'm not sure if I'll end up doing that. We'll see what my skills get me to. The roof, the ceiling I did from inside. There really was one layer of, it was actually carpet underpad, like this black stuff. I put on way long ago in 2006, and it worked okay in helping because so much vibration and noise and whatnot, and I couldn't get it off, so I just kept it. What I did, I just went with soundproofing, much like I did everywhere else in the car. Put another layer of soundproofing on top of it, and actually made it flush with the cross members here. So eventually, I don't know how I'm going to finish the top, but when I do, I could just put something over the whole thing. It's probably going to be custom made. Put something over the top, and it's going to be good. In terms of dome lights, I don't really know what to do for dome lights. I looked around just on eBay and Amazon to find something. Really didn't find anything that works really well. So if you have any ideas, let me know. I'd love to see what you guys would put in here. It all works. It's just not connected to anything, so I have two of them. And then in terms of moving forward, basically, the next thing I have to do is show you all the problems. So I'm going to show you the front now, because the front is where all the issues are, and it's just been a pain. And I'm just going to show you right now what's going on. So let's go take a look. All right, so the front. Back here again, and if you'll notice, it looks all terrible again. And the reason is, I've had nothing but problems with water damage here. Right from the roof, when I sealed all the holes, I thought I had, fixed everything. And right before the winter, I did the front over here, and then I basically closed everything up, and in the spring I opened up and it was just full of water again. And I'm thinking to myself, I really thought I got the roof, you know, I thought I fixed all the leaks. And I checked it, and I did, and the roof was fine. The problem being, the roof is not the issue. It turns out that the water has been coming from the dashboard where the firewall is. Not just on the driver's side, but on the passenger side too. So if you look over here, it looks awful, and it looks better now than it did before, but it was full of water, and it's already starting to rust. All my paint's come off, and essentially I gotta strip it back down and do it all over again. I really don't feel like doing that, and really sucks doing that again. And then the other side, and the driver's side, I also have to pull that off. I haven't ripped that off yet, but I know I have to open it, dry it out, otherwise it's just gonna rot the floor. The water's gonna be trapped between the rubber and the metal, and it's gonna make this mess over here. So it turns out, I thought originally that it was water coming through the windows, and the water is coming through the windows. It's in the door panel itself, because all the seals are just done on this car. When we got it in 05, it already had, all the seals were done. But turns out the water does stop. There's a little gasket here so the water doesn't come in. Where the water's coming through is the firewall. And it's like a perfect storm of stupidity, bad design, and time that kind of started this problem. So if you're having this problem, basically what's happening is a lot of people are having problems on the passenger side, not as many on the driver's side, but it's all related. The first problem is basically how the water works, how it runs down the firewall. On the firewall, you have grommets for your wires, basically, and all your wires go through, and that's cool, right? Weatherproofing. But what's happened is the water collects in a basin right underneath the windshield wipers, and the basin, rather than have a draining point where it just drains like down a pipe or something, it just drains right down the firewall. So basically water just pours down the back of that thing, and what's happened is all those grommets have lost their structural integrity. They've all turned hard, and water's just seeping in. So anywhere there's rubber or wires coming in, you got water coming in. So this thing is just flooding every time it rains. So I spent hours and hours and hours with a silicone caulking gun, using combinations of silicone and polyurethane caulking to try to get that fixed. And then recently I even took off the gas pedal, because I exposed more water damage back there. So what happened was, where I didn't touch it, there's like a soundproofing layer and some rubber. I ripped more of that off, and it's just soaked. So what happened is basically all the soundproofing worked like a giant sponge, and it seeped all throughout the front of the firewall, so it's all just rusting away. So I had to rip it all out, and then I exposed more rust back there, so I got to go in there with the grinder, because a drill with like just a brush on it's just not sufficient. You got to go in with the grinder, and you just got to spend a couple hours down there. So I'll go in with the grinder, grind it down, put some body filler and carbon back on there, carbon fiber, prime it, paint it, re-soundproof it, and put everything back down. Hopefully it's gonna be okay. For the grommets, I can't change them. They're just in such awkward areas that I'm just silicone. And in some areas, if I could reach in the engine bay, I do that. Other than that, it's a big project. We'll see how it keeps going. The handbrake's in now. We got all new gaskets, and everything's kind of up to date there. It's not connected yet. I eventually have to figure out how to connect that. That's one of the challenges. So the water, if we fix that, I got to put all the wipers back together, because I took all the wipers off, and then everything plastic just broke, so I have to replace all those parts. And we'll see how it all goes. And then the final problem is the starter. And the starter, as you heard originally on it, was just done. So I removed the starter, had it rebuilt, and I'm going to put that on eventually, and should be good to go. So the plan for this year is just kind of get everything done I have to do here, get the seats back in, and we'll see how it goes here. And I'll show you the last ideas I have in the back. If this doesn't look very comfortable, that's wrong. It's actually extremely comfortable because of all the rubber and soundproofing and stuff. It's actually awesome in here. This is where the batteries are supposed to go. You can't really see exactly, but 2 batteries basically sit here under the back seat. The plan is I want to get the batteries in, and then I want to actually put some brackets on so they don't fall out should anything happen. But this area went really well. I'm really pleased with it, as you saw in the before and afters. Kind of moving forward, the biggest issue I'm having is I want to make it obviously safe, so past safety. Seat belts, I cannot remove the bolts on this guy. They are T50, and I cannot remove them. I've tried everything. Impact guns, I've broken 3 or 4 sockets, and I've tried vice grips and everything, so we'll have to see what happens. Might have to just cut it off and weld something on, or I'm not really sure, we'll see. Same thing with the rear ones, there's just so much water in here before everything's rusty. I can't get anything off. The only belt I was able to get off is the driver's side, which is awesome, because that's the main one. I bought new belts, I'll put new belts on that. Hopefully remove these, remove the plastics. I'm not gonna touch the panels for now on the doors, although they look terrible. I think I'll eventually get some custom made and sound system and whatnot, and kind of go from there. But that's the plan moving forward, and we'll see how it all goes. And next time you see this car, hopefully it's gonna have some real progress, and maybe even be able to start it and drive it and see how that goes.